most effective means, or actually, let me go ahead and read another. Let me get to another key point. Let me get to another key point right here. So the third key point is the dominant group defines social standards. The dominant group defines. The dominant group defines social standards. Wilson argues that ruling groups establish standards for beauty, standards for morality, education, intelligence, history, leadership, patriotism, and success. They establish the standards for every aspect of your life. These standards often reflect the interests and values of those already in power. If another group defines your worth, it also shapes your aspirations. And that's one of the reasons why we, as a whole, don't aspire to be truly liberated. The fourth key point is ideology justifies inequality. Dr. Wilson argues that unequal societies often develop explanations that make inequality appear natural. Unequal societies often develop explanations that make inequality appear natural. Examples include beliefs that some groups work harder than others, like black people are lazy, right? Some groups are naturally more capable. Some groups reflect merit alone. Poverty is primarily the individual's fault. Dr. Wilson encourages readers to examine how such beliefs function politically. The key lesson of that key point is ideas about inequality can influence whether people see existing arguments as fair or open to change. All right, back to the reading. Page 225. The most effective means of dismantling and reproducing ideas in society is in the African American community in particular, is to have that community perceive perceive their dissemination and reproduction as the work of disinterested. I messed that up. Let me read that again. The most effective means of disseminating and reproducing ideas in society and in the African American community in particular is to have that community perceive their dissemination and reproduction as the work of disinterested, unbiased, non-manipulative, liberal yet authoritative white American individuals, groups, and institutions, or as following from sources independent of the marked influence of the powerful. Thus, white America strongly pushes and projects the powerful mythology of independent liberal America media, universities, and other information processing establishment. That is, America loudly congratulates itself for what it calls the free press and mass media, which permits the free exchange of ideas. Most Black Americans utilize white media and these factors as their primary, if not sole, source of information. Most are not mindful of the fact that the American press and mass media are privately owned, profit-making, white elite-controlled corporations. The press is one among other institutions and one of the most important in maintaining the hegemony of the corporate class and the capitalist system itself. So we're going to read what Parenti says about this. If the press cannot mold our every opinion, it can frame the perpetual reality around which our opinions take shape. Here may lie the most important effect of the news media. They set the issue agenda for the rest of us, choosing what to emphasize and what to ignore or suppress, in effect, organizing our political world for us. The media may not always be able to tell us what to think, but they are strikingly successful in telling us what to think about. It is enough that they create opinion, visibility, giving legitimacy to creation views and legitimacy to others. The media do the same to substantive ideas that they do to candidates, raising some from oblivion and conferring legitimacy upon them while consigning others to limbo. This power to determine the issue agenda, the information flow, the parameters of political debate, so that it extends from ultra-right to no further than the moderate center, is of totally awesome. The central aim of the ruling elite's ideology process is to define the domain of discourse. That is, The corporate elite seeks to define the limits of the acceptable ideas and to define what is worth talking about, worth learning, teaching, promoting, and writing about. Of course, the limits of the acceptable and the responsible are set to those points which support and justify the interests of the elite itself. To a great extent, the elite ideology process essentially involves the reinforcement of long-held orthodox American values, perspective, practices, and ideas which the system of power relations has already indirectly shaped to begin with. These factors are the ideological basis of elite power. It is a well-known fact that propaganda works best when used to reinforce an already existing notion or to establish a logical or emotional connection between a new idea and the social norm. It is important to note that many of these pre-existing notions are the products of elite propaganda and conditioning processes harkening back to early historical eras, to socialization experiences in the early childhood, adolescent, and young childhood years of the family, educational institutions, peer group, and to media exposures during the impressionable years as well. The idea, attitudes, and responses, tendencies implanted by these early experiences are often mistakenly identified by their hosts as self-generated. These previous selective exposures and experiences become the infrastructure which helps to maintain a later accrued selective attention, tunnel vision, orientation. This orientation serves to resist new ideas and practices not compatible with the old or pre-existing set of ideas and practices.
Don't let the heat, traffic, or tire trouble slow you down. Stay road ready for every summer mile with Monroe Auto Service and Tire Centers. Get a free oil change and a free alignment with Continental Tires. Plus, save up to $140 instantly on select brands. Visit Monroe.com today. Valid through the end of the month.
This may be the case given when such pre-existing ideas or practices are not produce desired or satisfactory outcomes. Thus, through its monopoly of the media and the means of disseminating and validating information and interpreting reality, the ruling elite not only reinforces and channels those orthodox values which support its supremacy, but also utilizes its monopolies to simultaneously prevent groups with a different ideology from presenting or interpretation of events, as Hirsch further contends. In order to preserve ideological hegemony, it is only necessary for the ruling group to reinforce dominant values, at the same time prevent the dissemination of opinion that effectively challenges the basic assumptions of the society. Public knowledge of inequality and injustice isn't so damaging as long as these perceptions are not drawn together into a coherent, opposing ideology. David Salix very aptly observes that the ruling elite achieves its ends when it prevents groups with opposing ideologies from attaining a value census through its attempt to create confusion, fragmentation, and demonstrate inconsistency in their belief systems, or as Domhoff argues, when it ensures that opposing opinions and values are only partly developed, remain isolated, and are made suspect. Thus, as Domhoff summarizes, the elite ideology processes and network is not a be-all, end-all ruling class domination. It does not function to eliminate conflict, thereby maintaining the illusion of the free flow of ideas, freedom of speech, but to keep conflict from leading to an alternative ideology that provides the basis for an anti-corporate, anti-capitalist, anti-white supremacy social movement. Domhoff concludes his review of the process of ruling class domination in America, which parallels and conditions the process of white supremacy in America and the world, with a very important reminder that the struggle for power is a conscious struggle. The struggle for power in America is a conscious struggle. The contradictions and tensions inherent in the ruling class domination and in the white global supremacy makes such domination vulnerable to a successful challenge from insurgent mass class and ethnic-based movements. And appropriately innovative united, well-organized political economic counterattack by which movements can take successful advantage of the economic and political conflict and vulnerabilities now present in the white supremacist establishment or of its inevitable future contradictions and conflicts. All right. Next key point. Education transmits ideology. That's the next key point. It's education transmits ideology. Wilson argues that schools do more than teach reading and mathematics. Schools do more than teaching reading and mathematics. Schools also teach social values, political assumptions, historical narratives, concepts of authority, and acceptable behavior. They help to shape how we exist. Education is one of the primary institutions through which ideology is produced. Those who educate you control how you think. The media, next key point is media reinforces dominant ideology. Dr. Wilson believes media plays a central role in legitimizing existing power. The media can influence the public's opinion, the public's priorities, cultural values, stereotypes, and definitions of success. Wilson argues that repeated messages eventually become accepted as common sense. People often mistake repeated ideas for objective truth. People often mistake repeated ideas for objective truth. Think about it. Back to the reading, page 227. Media and the ideology process. Social institutions are the primary means by which a society defines itself. Its views of relationships to the world. This is the case whether we refer to the society's religions, family, education, scientific, economic, healthcare, political, or other social institutions. Social institutions structure and give meaning to a society's social thoughts, practices, and interactions. They regulate and socialize its members and provide the instrumental means by which the society instructs and polices itself, propagates and reinforces its dominant values, maintains and advances its dominant interest, generates social power, and structures its internal and external power relations. All right. So, institutions in an oppressive society function to maintain its structure's status quo. As Michael Parenti contends, most American institutions, be they hospitals, museums, universities, businesses, banks, scientific laboratories, or mass media, are owned by a relatively small number of corporate rich. While trying to understand the context and purposes of the media, this pattern of ownership takes on special significance. In the context of ethnicity, pluralistic America, the later part of the next to last sentence of Parenti's statement can be usefully translated to owned by the white American community. However, it remains true that within the community, the major institutions and the context of our present focus, the mass media, are owned by a relatively small number of the corporate rich. Parenti proceeds to ask and answer the following question. Who specifically owns the mass media in the United States? 10 businesses and functional corporations control 3 major television and radio networks. And remember, this is not present day in this book. NBC, CBS, and ABC, but a lot of things haven't changed. 34 subsidiary television stations, 201 cable TV stations, 62 radio stations, 20 record companies, 59 magazines including Time and Newsweek, 58 newspapers including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Los Angeles Times, 41 book publishers, and various motion picture companies like Columbia Pictures and 20th Century Fox. 3/4 of the major stockholders of ABC, CBS, and NBC are banks such as Chase Manhattan, Morgan Guaranty Trust, and Citibank and Bank of America. The overall pattern is one of increasing concentration of ownership and earnings. According to a 1982 Los Angeles Times survey, independent daily newspapers are being gobbled up by the chains at a rate of 50 or 60 a year. 10 newspaper chains earn over half of all newspaper revenues in this country. 5 media conglomerates share 95% of the records and tapes market, which Warner's and CBS alone controlling 65% of the market. 8 Hollywood studios account for 89% of the U.S. feature film rentals. 3 television networks earn over 2/3 of total U.S. television revenues. 7 paperback publishers dominate the mass market for books. Of the existing independent television and radio stations, 80% are network affiliates. Practically the only shows these independents produce are the local evening newscasts. The rest of their time is being devoted to network television programs. Most of the remaining stations are affiliated with the public broadcasting system, which receives almost all its money from federal government and from corporate donors and their foundations, with a smaller share from listener subscriptions. We must keep in mind that when Parenti presented these data in 1986, the ownership and control of the mass media was still diffused compared to its narrow monopolistic ownership today. Not only has traditional electronic and print media been far more consolidated under far fewer owners since then, but the communications revolution currently underway in the forms of information superhighways and giant national and international interactive media networks are the sources of furiously combative conflicts over the ownership and control by less than half of media and information processing conglomerates. The mass media and information communication systems are the major tools for generating, maintaining, and converting individual and public opinions into social power used to oppress and exploit. All right.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is Base 44. This is a first look at the current industry-leading AI app builder, and you wouldn't believe the kind of apps that people are creating. Smart nutrition apps, inventory trackers, onboarding tools, you name it. And if the only thing stopping me from making the app is the idea, then why not build an app that gives me endless app ideas? So let's make it. Pro tip, I draft the full app spec in ChatGPT, and then I drop the prompt directly into Base 44. It gives me super detailed structure. And here it is. Everything I laid out in detail as it goes. This is pretty awesome, but I want to make it playful. So I'm going to add a swipe left and swipe right interface. The same usability we all know. Now I'm going to add one more feature. So every idea that I favorite will turn into a kickoff prompt to start building the app itself. And that's it. Just come up with your idea, any idea, and Base 44 will do the rest. So go to Base 44 and create apps with your name on it.
Hey everybody, Walton Goggins here. Starting a business is never easy, but with GoDaddy Aero, that endeavor is about to become a whole lot easier.
Hey man, you got this.
Create a website that looks like you know what you're doing, even if you don't know what you're doing, because you're using a website that developed a tool that knows exactly what it's doing. It helps you design a logo. This is what we came up with. We put it here, we put it everywhere on our website, and we even put it right here. What I'm telling you, from one central command center, you can have all your social media empire operating. You're doing it all, everything